What's up, everybody? Matthew Fisher back again with another movie review. If you haven't watched my movie reviews already, I have a system where I look at 5 different categories. One being plot, second being writing, third being cinematography, and then fourth being acting, and then the fifth and final category is pace. So let's go ahead and introduce the movie I'm reviewing. I said that I would review a horror movie or a scary movie, whatever's in that genre, for Halloween. And I mentioned Evil Dead. I might have mentioned another one, but you know, sometimes you're just in the mood for something and you can't help it. So I chose this, and it is absolutely a horror movie. I don't care what anyone says. It's definitely a horror movie, but it is the Terminator. So you know, people might classify this as an action movie because of the franchise as a whole, but if Terminator 2 was never made, I really honestly believe that the Terminator to this day would be a horror icon up there with Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers. Actually, this is basically if Michael Myers could run and shoot a gun, that's basically the Terminator, other than the endoskeleton and all that. But let's go ahead and jump into the plot of the movie. Basically, it's simple. The concept is not simple, but the actual plot itself is, you know, 2 guys come to the present. We're introduced to Sarah Connor at her work, and then from there, it's just the Terminator acquiring his clothes and his weapons. The Resistance fighter, known as Kyle Reese, doing the same thing. The Terminator then goes about killing anyone named Sarah Connor in the phone book, up to the point to where Sarah sees it on the news, calls the cops about it, and then eventually it leads to that awesome scene in the Tech Noir club, where the shootout begins. And you know, from the beginning up until that point, it really is everyone just getting prepared for what's about to happen. You know, the Terminator is obviously getting prepared. Kyle Reese is getting prepared. He's finding Sarah Connor, and they all come together at this club. And from here on out to the end of the movie, really the whole movie from here on out is nothing but a chase. Because I didn't really notice it. I've watched this movie plenty of times, and it's not until like I've gotten older that you really realize that from the time that Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor meet in the Tech Noir club, they go on the run, and then James Cameron does a very good job of providing his exposition while they're on the run and they're hiding in that car lot or parking garage. And you know, he's explaining to her as they're hiding, so the audience is getting their exposition while the chase is still ongoing. So it takes her from Tech Noir. They end up at that parking garage. Exposition is given, and then from there the chase continues because the Terminator finds them again. They crash, and then they are arrested. We pause for a little more for Kyle Reese to give a little more exposition in his interview, which is very clever for James Cameron, because every bit of exposition in this film is given in an entertaining way that's, you know, not boring. Because obviously the exposition I just mentioned, he's giving an interview where the performance is great. I mean, you really believe this guy's from a horrible future. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the exposition in the parking garage. So there's never a dull moment. But from here, they go to that the police station, and that's when, you know, obviously that infamous scene with the Terminator killing all the cops. And then from there, they continue going on the run, spend the night, and then it's the next night that the Terminator finds them at the hotel, and then from there we go on to the end of the movie. So really, it's nothing but a chase, and it's just going and going and going. It's really good. But let's jump into the plot. I couldn't find anything wrong with the plot. I just made a few notes here. The reason this is my favorite of the Terminator franchise is because it's the only one you know, that's a horror film. The second one definitely has horror elements. You know, obviously everyone remembers the dream sequence where everyone dies. I mean, I don't want to. If you haven't seen Terminator 2, I mean, it's amazing. But there are obviously horror elements in the second one, but this first one is absolutely a horror film. I mean, look at the scene where the Terminator breaks into Sarah's apartment, kills her roommate and her boyfriend. That's straight out of a slasher movie. I mean, the way her boyfriend gets thrown through the wall, she screams and he shoots her down. Everything about it reminded me of like Michael Myers and Jason, except with a gun. But like I said, it's the only one that's a horror film. I already mentioned Michael Myers. Let's see here. Right. Okay. And I like this plot is so condensed. The movie is only an hour 44. So, I mean, I couldn't find anything wrong with the plot. I mean, it's just a great plot. So, I had to give a plot a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 for the plot. Moving on to the writing. Again, I couldn't find anything. I mean, I have notes here of everything good I could find. I love the interactions between the two cops at the police station, and how the one cop can never finish his story because he's always been interrupted by the other cop. He's always trying to give an interesting story that relates to whatever's going on at that moment, and he's always interrupted. It's very funny. It makes you like these cops for the little bit of time we have them before they are ultimately killed. But let's see. You know, more humor with the boyfriend calling Sarah's apartment and her picking up, and then he starts talking dirty. I think that was a very, very humorous moment. Yeah, I have here, you believe everyone's motivations very well, especially when Sarah is confronted by Kyle Reese and he proposes this future to her that would be hard for anyone to imagine. I thought James Cameron did a very good job writing how she would react to that, because she tries to get away from him more than one time, and that makes sense considering the story that he's telling her about the future, even going as far as like biting his hand to the point of bleeding. And I love that moment because it shows you how scared Sarah is and how desperate she is to get away from this guy. But by her biting his hand to the point of bleeding, and the way he takes it, he barely grimaces. You can tell this dude's a soldier from just a terrible, terrible war. That whole moment, I love that moment. It's very well written. Let's see. And yeah, that's all the notes I have for the writing. I could not find any writing wrong with this movie. I couldn't find anything that I thought was cheesy or not realistic. So I'm going to give the writing a 10 out of 10 as well. So 10 out of 10 for a plot and 10 out of 10 for writing. Let's go ahead and go into the cinematography. There's a great oneer that James Cameron does at the police station. I think it might be the introduction to the cops. I'm not sure, but it's a oneer through the basically where everybody does their computer work, and it follows the chief, who I assume to be the chief or whatever he is. Follows him through there, and it's when I believe the other cop is telling him about the murders for the first time, about the connection between the names, and it tracks him through that area and like down a hallway and into his office. It's very well done. I wanted to point that out because I thought that was the best camera work in terms of long distance camera work, I guess I would say. It's not the best shot, but it's really good camera work. Where am I? Yeah, okay. If you watch my other videos, with cinematography, I include such things as CGI and prosthetics and stuff because it fits better in that category than the other four. But I have here that the future warfare looks very good. He did a very good job using small props. I mean, obviously it's 2017 now, so when you watch the opening, you can tell that it's most likely a small prop put over a small set in the background of men running around. But it's so well shot that it still works. It still works. I mean, you can't help time. Time's always going to be there. But that's how you know how well made of a movie this is, because it still holds up. Let's see. Okay, yeah, the best. I think this is probably the best in terms of the practical effects. Is when at the very end of the movie, the Terminator is chasing down Sarah in the truck after he's already been run over and all that stuff, and that you keep getting these shots of him in the driver's seat, and like half his face is missing. And there's one shot in particular where it's from the left, and it's aimed at his left side that's missing all the meat. And I think it helps having the cab of the truck very dark. It looks so real. It still holds up. This movie was made in 1984, and it still looks good. Let's see if I have another example. I love the fact, I threw this in cinematography as well. You could throw this in writing, but the way the Terminator, it probably fits better in cinematography now that I think about it, but the way the Terminator decays over time throughout the movie. Because you start off in the first like 30 minutes, he looks like normal Arnold Schwarzenegger. But you'll notice, and I didn't notice this until much later, because I always wondered why, like where did his eyebrows go? Because that, when he's chasing him in the police car and he's looking through the parking garage, his eyebrows are gone. But that's how specific James Cameron can be. When they're running out of Tech Noir, Kyle Reese blows up a car, causing a bunch of fire. The Terminator jumps through the fire, obviously not hurt by it. But when he comes through the fire, he no longer has his eyebrows, and his hair has been like, I don't know what, like part of it has been burned off. Because all of a sudden he has a different look. And when I was little, I never noticed why that was, but I did notice like the Terminator's starting to look more pale and just like more like death as the movie goes along. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, cinematography. This is also shot like a horror film. The best example is at the very end after, spoiler alert, Kyle Reese dies. When she's over his body, and that Terminator, the top half of him wakes up and grabs at her. That's straight out of any horror movie. I mean, you can't tell me that that's not a great horror moment. I mean, that is so well done. I'm trying to think of some other horror moments in the movie. I already mentioned the death of her roommate and her boyfriend. It's just kind of a shame. Like Terminator 2 is so awesome, but because of that, people kind of just forget about how different the Terminator is. But that's all I have for cinematography. The cinematography, couldn't find a problem with that as well. So 10 out of 10 for cinematography. That's a 10 out of 10 for the first three categories here. So let's go ahead and hop into the acting. Great around the board, really. I couldn't find anything. I mean, the movie's obviously carried by Linda Hamilton's performance as Sarah Connor. I mean, everybody loves her. Everybody loves her in this one. Everybody loves her in the second one. She's obviously way more vulnerable in this one. I have here, yeah, this is her best part in the movie. Her performance when she finds out that her friend is dead. Her name's Ginger, I believe. And she's crying in the police station, and she says, well, can I see the body to make sure? And the cop says they've already been identified, and she starts sobbing some more. And the way she's sobbing, and she kind of yells out Ginger's name while she's crying, it felt so realistic. I mean, that's so well done, considering these characters have died. We're not going to talk about them anymore for the rest of the movie, but we have to give Sarah that moment. It's such a small moment, but because of the acting by Linda Hamilton, you're like, okay, I buy it. Like, she cried. She did everything a person would do in that situation. So those characters, more her friend than her boyfriend, but they both get they're justified, I guess. The deaths are justified in the film because of the reaction by Sarah Connor in that moment. It's so well done by Linda Hamilton. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay. So another thing about her performance is at the end of the film, when she cannot get Kyle Reese to get up and she starts talking like a soldier, it's crazy how, you watch Terminator 2, then you go back and watch the Terminator. That's the birth of that Sarah Connor that we see in Terminator 2, is when she starts, screaming for him to get up and calling him a soldier and all that stuff. It really is. It's so cool. I mean, really, Terminator 2, they help each other out so much because of that little moment. You can go back and watch the Terminator and say, oh, okay, there's that Sarah Connor that we know from Terminator 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger is, okay, people crack jokes about, oh, okay, well, he plays a robot, so, he's not given too much to do. But I believe that with what he was given to do, obviously he doesn't have a lot of dialogue. The way his body acting, I guess that's what you would call it, body acting, is so well done. Obviously you got to give credit to him and also James Cameron for directing him. But I've watched some behind the scenes stuff about Arnold talking about it and how he really he had so much fun really buying into this idea that he is a robot. He was talking about how in that scene where he's scanning the parking garage for them, that him and James Cameron had talked about how he should move his eyes followed by his head as if he was some kind of machine, and you can tell he's having fun with it, because not only that, but in the tech noir scene when he's shooting that Uzi around, there's that moment where he's looking around for Kyle Reese, doesn't see him, and he puts the gun back up like this and starts walking. And I love that shot when there is absolutely no emotion, obviously because he's a Terminator, but he's reloading that gun right in front of Sarah Connor and points it at her, and it's so brutal the way it's shot, because I mean, you're seeing someone almost get shot in the face with an Uzi before Kyle Reese jumps out and shoots him before he can do it. But I don't know, I don't know, I'm not going to say he doesn't get enough credit, Arnold, but he's so well, he's very good in this movie. I mean, he's extremely menacing, and it's because of Terminator 2 that he hopped back into that hero role where we all love him. But I think that actually makes him scarier in this one, because it's the only movie I can think of where Arnold's the bad guy, and not only is he a bad guy, he's menacing. I mean, like I said, he's like Michael Myers with a gun. I mean, I don't know. I think he did a very good job. That's all I have. Kyle Reese, Michael Biehn, obviously very well done. He completely sells himself as this resistance fighter from the future. His greediness. There's that scene where he's talking to Sarah. That same night. It's at the end when they're at the hotel, and he's explaining to her about how women are good soldiers and everything, and the idea that he's never even had a chance to be involved in any kind of romance or anything because of this war that's going on. They don't even have time for that. He just nails it. He's pitiful. You feel bad for him. But yeah, the acting, again, I couldn't find anything. Couldn't find anything I didn't like. Nothing cheesy, nothing like that. So I got to give the acting also a 10 out of 10. So that's a 10 out of 10 for the first 4 categories. Let's go ahead and get to the fifth and final one. That is the pace of the film. Like I said earlier, the movie is only an hour 44, hour 45, somewhere in there. So when you make a movie that's only an hour 45, and it's about a Terminator chasing down 2 humans, the whole movie is going to be a chase. And that's what this movie is, like I said earlier. The pace just flies by. I have here every slow scene, and I quote slow because there are no slow scenes. What I mean by slow scene is any scene that is just people talking. Even those scenes are giving you either humor or exposition in a good way. I mean, there's nothing there that slows down the movie at all. I mean, you obviously have your scenes at the police station where they're talking, you have the scenes at the motel, but you're invested all the time. You're never checking your watch. Let's see here. The whole movie is only 2 nights, so that obviously helps the pace considering it's an hour 44 and you only have 2 days to deal with. It's crazy to think when you finish the movie all this happened in that short amount of time. I mean, Sarah Connor's life changed in a big way in just these 2 nights in this movie. Yeah, so I mean, there's not a part in this movie that slows it down. There's not a single part in this movie that slows the movie down. It's a very well trimmed movie, very lean. Really, I've always said that Empire Strikes Back is the leanest movie I've ever seen. This is up there. There's not really anything in this movie I could say you could take out or anything that it needs. So I also give the pace a 10 out of 10, which means this is going to be my first movie that I give a 5 out of 5 or a 10 out of 10. So that's my final score for the Terminator. 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. Really great movie. One of the greatest questions in film, I think, is T1 or T2, and it really just comes. They're so close in terms of quality that it really just comes down to taste. And I like the first one better because it's a horror film. And I know, is it fair to say, because ever since T2, they've had that trope of Arnold being the good Terminator fighting the bad Terminator. It's happened twice since Terminator 2. And really since that, the franchise has been an action franchise. And I would really love to see it go back to horror. And I think that's what it needs. It probably will do that with the new one. I think Tim Miller's directing it. Hopefully they're going back to a horror. More horror than action. Or, balance it out a little more. It doesn't have to be an action franchise. But, like I said, it comes down to taste. T2, I think it's fair to say it's a better movie. Because it's like, there's more to it. This one's an hour 44. I think the second one's almost 2.5 hours. So, it has the same stuff from the first one, but it adds, that question of, what is being human and what's being a machine. And if a machine can be human, then what kind of question does that pose? But, Terminator 1 is just, T2 wouldn't have been there without it, obviously. But it's a very great movie. I think I'm going to hop back into the Star Wars reviews and continue that. Took a little break to do a little Halloween feature and was feeling the Terminator. So I think the next one I'm going to do is Rogue One. And then I'll continue from there and finish up Star Wars, and then probably might hop back in here and just finish up the Terminator saga. Because, like I said, T1, T2, awesome. But those next 3 definitely have their problems. They'll be really fun to review. There's a lot to discuss in those 3. Boy, Genesis, that'll be a low score. Just spoiler alert. But yeah, great movie. I'm gonna do Rogue One next. And I hope you all have a good day. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. Please share, and please visit my channel. That's also very important. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.